My name is Gerald Vaughan. It's been a full year since my life exploded into chaos, shattering everything I once held dear. It wasn't just a simple explosion. It was a carefully orchestrated collapse, one that I set in motion. I engineered the downfall and then stepped away, leaving behind around 60 partners in deception, among whom was, heartbreakingly, my own wife. There was a dark thrill in watching them all crumble, vanishing along with her. Before that cataclysm, I lived in blissful ignorance. I was the happy husband, head over heels in love, relishing our 5-year marriage. We had a warm home, close friends and neighbors, careers that fulfilled us, and families who supported us. We were financially secure, steadily building a future together, but then everything took an unexpected turn. I wish I could explain it all with a neat, logical thread, but even now the truth remains elusive. Vanessa was my college sweetheart, so kind, affectionate, completely loyal, or so I thought. She never gave me a reason to doubt her. There were no signs of wandering eyes, no unsolicited flirtations, no wardrobe malice meant to invite attention. I never once questioned her commitment. I work in a high-tech research and engineering lab focused on cutting-edge electronics for clients like NASA and the military. We even call it Geek Central. There's something uniquely ironic about geeks. While we dive into complex problems at work, we keep our home lives refreshingly simple and genuine. We're straightforward, never putting on elaborate facades because we simply are not skilled at the art of deception. Some might laugh and say that our behavior is a bit immature, and maybe they'd be right. We tell cheesy jokes, quote obscure films and books, and get lost in minute details. But above all, we hold honesty sacred. For us, honesty isn't just a trait. It's the bedrock of our reputation and our livelihoods. Geeks don't lie. We know that credibility matters, whether it's in our personal relationships or our careers. On the other side of this delicate balance, Vanessa was thriving in the high-stakes world of finance at Thomson Thompson, a heavyweight in funding major construction projects across the mid-Atlantic. Despite the firm's reputation, I was often astonished by the backgrounds of many at her workplace. They could crunch numbers and whip up spreadsheets, yet few had the polished academic pedigree I'd expected. Their conversations often left me feeling like a misfit back in high school. I remember one small incident that perfectly highlighted this divide. When Vanessa and I named our 2 kittens Oscar and Nat, one of her coworkers suggested names inspired by more famous figures. It was a tiny moment that laid bare the vast differences in our worlds. In their circle, status and conformity reigned supreme, leaving me feeling like an outsider. Vanessa and her colleagues navigated the meticulous world of finance. Every transaction was scrutinized and personal ambition reigned over genuine integrity. My unease around them grew over time, especially at events like the office Christmas party held at the local Marriott Hotel. That evening, with drinks flowing and voices melding into one indistinct chatter, I struggled to tell colleagues apart from their spouses. I distinctly recall overhearing a woman refer to her work husband in a casual tone, a stark reminder of the transactional alliances that defined Vanessa's professional circle and their ephemeral loyalty. I didn't harbor outright hostility toward them, but moments like that slowly eroded any goodwill I once felt. Then came a remark that chilled me to the core. I wanted to turn and pinpoint the speaker, but something inside made me pause. Stop. Listen. Don't react. Blend into the background, my inner voice whispered. We've got next week off, a woman remarked casually. I suppose we'll manage without crossing the street, another laughed, and then someone added, or you could always invent a minor account emergency. Their laughter escalated while I remained frozen, trying to decode the meaning behind crossing the street. Were they hinting at a future work obligation at the party? Or was there a hidden message buried in those words? I couldn't shake off the sense of foreboding. Ridiculous. I believed that no spouse should need to be reminded to remain faithful. We shouldn't have to be told that developing a so-called work husband is acceptable. Even after all of it, Vanessa's infidelity remained an unsolvable riddle. She never offered a true explanation, only flimsy reasons and evasive excuses that did nothing but deepen the mystery. The woman I once loved, the bright, sincere woman who had once seemed so genuine, was gone. In her place stood someone I barely recognized, A woman who had embraced deceit with the cold mantra, "What he doesn't know won't hurt me." Caleb later revealed that their affair was confined to those Wednesday lunch breaks, no secret trysts over my weekends away, as though she were abiding by some perverse code of ethical cheating, keeping everything neatly contained, yet never stopping entirely. Caleb even tried to rationalize it as some distorted form of bonding, but there was no justification for the toxic culture at Thompson & Thompson, a culture in which what they called team building was nothing more than a thinly veiled excuse for infidelity. In the end, despite the twisted logic they used, I couldn't let myself remain entangled in this deceit. I had a choice: either spend my life untangling the aftermath of betrayal or simply walk away. And I chose to walk away, my quest for vengeance, refusing to follow the path I'd once envisioned. My legal battles ended as Thompson & Thompson's coffers emptied, and Martin Harris was left financially shattered. The irony stung. I had orchestrated the downfall of both the company and Harris, leaving them unable to pay the settlements I fought for. Vanessa, now jobless, sought alimony, but my lawyer argued that her unemployment was a direct result of her unfaithfulness, and her claim was denied. Even more painful was that many of the betrayed spouses, instead of directing their anger at the true culprits, turned it on me. I was seen as the catalyst who forced them to confront a brutal reality. I never expected that outcome, but in a vast city like this, I never needed their forgiveness anyway. Then unexpectedly, one evening at a local bar, Emma Harris approached me. There was an undeniable edge to her, a captivating aura, as she slid over to sit beside me. "I'm divorcing my husband," she declared, "but I want more than simple revenge. I want him to feel the sting of our choices. I need you to know that I slept with the husband of your unfaithful wife. Will you help me?" Her words struck with calculated intensity. "Will you help me defile and humiliate the man who betrayed your wife?" I paused, considering the weight of her request, then agreed, a decision that, despite its consequences, I never once regretted. Vanessa's family, shocked and furious, confronted me about the divorce, but I faced the situation head-on. I showed them the video evidence as they watched, their anger giving way to shock, grief, and deep shame. Apologies soon followed, and despite their attempts to convince me to give Vanessa another chance, I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. My heart had been hardened beyond repair. For over a year after the divorce, I reflected on every detail, the bitter irony of it all. Despite my expertise in high-tech electronics, it wasn't sophisticated technology that exposed Vanessa's betrayal. It was basic, almost primitive methods: a parked car, a discreet bribe, a cheap off-the-shelf camera. These tools were a harsh reminder that even the most advanced technology can't protect against human treachery. As the evidence mounted, I wondered, if I hadn't overheard that fateful conversation, would I have ever known the truth? From that moment on, the signs became impossible to ignore. Furtive glances, accidental touches on the street, and couples casually wandering together as though nothing was wrong. How had they managed to hide so long? Did no one care? The questions forced me to confront an unsettling truth about our modern world. In my own professional circles, men would boast about their romantic conquests, their only real companion found in themselves. Once again, I found myself on the outside, unwillingly watching the reckless indulgence of those around me. Now every time I see Vanessa, on the street, in a store, I feel that familiar pang. We never exchange words. Our eyes meet only briefly, a flash of shared sorrow that I quickly look away from. Her presence is a constant, painful reminder of the life I lost, a life now in ruins. And as I pick up the pieces of who I once was, I realize that I must continue forward. Still, I tried to dismiss it, comforting myself with the thought that I married Vanessa for a reason. Whatever they were insinuating couldn't be that serious. I pushed those unsettling thoughts aside and rejoined the party. For 3 long weeks, that conversation barely surfaced in my mind. Then on a Friday evening, while I was climbing the carpeted stairs from our basement, I heard Vanessa's voice echo from upstairs. "All right, I'll take care of it. Before I sign off today, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate you staying with me through this raw journey of betrayal and revenge. If this story resonates with you, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support makes all the difference." After that tumultuous week, I plunged into a plan for retribution. I called Caleb and laid everything out. We would target Vanessa's office by splitting it into two camps, management and her close affiliates, roughly 10 individuals along with their respective work spouses. My aim wasn't merely to scorch them all. I wanted to obliterate their network of deceit. The rest of the office would feel the shockwaves, but I'd keep my own losses minimal. Caleb discreetly installed cameras in the management offices and in select work groups, while others were monitored as they passed through the lobby. When it finally came time to file for divorce, I planned to expose every bit of evidence, ensuring that every spouse linked to the adulterous behavior would be forced to confront their own indiscretions. That harrowing weekend, I agonized over whether I had missed the warning signs. There must have been hints. Vanessa was always so attentive when I talked about my work, never revealing the secrets of her own. Could she really lead a double life without a flicker of remorse? Her anxious reaction when I brought up that strange wife remark indicated that she knew exactly how far she was willing to go. I struggled to understand how anyone could keep up such levels of deceit without succumbing to overwhelming guilt. And then it hit me. In leaving town, I might have unwittingly provided Vanessa and her work husband the perfect cover to use our home as a secret meeting spot. A fresh wave of anger surged through me, but I quickly recognized the futility of dwelling on it. In the grand scheme, their actions, however brazen, were ultimately irrelevant. I had already made up my mind. I was divorcing her, regardless of any further betrayals uncovered along the way. I braced myself for what lay ahead and headed home Sunday night. To cut costs, we decided not to document every single encounter at the hotel. Only Vanessa's and Mr. Harris's meetings were meticulously recorded. Keeping room rentals and surveillance time to a minimum was a calculated move. But when it came to my wife, I needed proof beyond any possibility of a one-time indiscretion. I needed irrefutable evidence to banish any lingering doubt. In just 2 grueling, gut-wrenching weeks, I obtained it. While some might argue that a single act of infidelity is cause enough for retribution, maybe it would have been. But my desire for justice extended far beyond Vanessa and Mr. Harris. I wanted to expose them all, the entire office that turned a blind eye to my wife's betrayal. Unraveling this web of deceit took time. Most work spouses had a routine, meeting at that hotel across the street every week, sometimes more frequently. Although we couldn't catch every single instance, we gathered enough evidence to satisfy my thirst for truth. Desperate to escape the unbearable truth at home, I buried myself in work, pretending to stay late most nights. Yet even when I was at home, the memory of what had occurred, what had happened in our very own house, was suffocating. I made excuses to leave, citing last-minute emergencies, claiming I had to travel to Wallops on Thursdays when, in reality, I sought refuge at a hotel near my workplace. Fridays I retreated to Brandon and Tiffany's place. Mondays I checked back into that hotel, unable to face the emptiness of our home. Vanessa grew insistent, complaining of neglect, while the cold, unspoken tension between us thickened with each passing day. I even switched to the guest room, deliberately leaving early every morning to keep my distance. Maybe she sensed the strain. Maybe she believed my flimsy explanations. But nothing stopped her from continuing her regular Wednesday lunches with her work husband. In fact, those lunches only seemed to stretch on longer. It became indisputably clear. Infidelity was endemic in Vanessa's workplace. A large swath of her colleagues, especially those in leadership, were ensnared in extramarital affairs. The corruption started at the very top. Months later, when I reviewed the videos, the most painful truth became evident. My name was nowhere to be found. Not once did they mention me, nor did anyone speak ill of me. It was as if I didn't exist. "That's what wives are for, right?" she melodically said with a tinge of humor. Wife? The word itself felt strangely off to me, and I couldn't help but ask, "What's that supposed to mean?" I rounded the corner just in time to see her ending a phone call. "Oh, that was Martin Harris. It's work-related. We need to head into the office tomorrow. Looks like we'll have some late nights coming up," she quickly explained, as if that cleared everything up. What hurt most was seeing her continue to wear her wedding rings during those encounters, a silent, brutal testament to her total disregard for our marriage. I was utterly invisible. Although there were moments of apparent tenderness between her and Martin, it was all shallow and empty, lacking the genuine connection of true love. And the moment I witnessed them sauntering together through the hotel lobby, his arm possessively wrapped around her waist as they headed off, confirmed it beyond doubt. Our marriage was dead. There would be no more empty explanations, no feeble apologies, no cliché reassurances. My decision was final. While my lawyer worked on the divorce papers, Caleb managed the rest of the plan. At exactly 10 a.m. on a crisp Monday morning, a process server strode into the Thompson & Thompson offices. With precise calculation, he delivered the divorce papers to both Vanessa and Martin Harris at their desks, and then proceeded to serve the documents to the company's CEO. In a bitter twist of irony, the CEO, Daniel Mercer, at 67 years old, with a trophy wife and a scandalous liaison with his secretary, was now exposed for his part in a culture steeped in infidelity. By 10:20, my phone buzzed relentlessly, but I silenced it, focusing instead on the task at hand. Meanwhile, Caleb's team of 5 moved discreetly across the city, delivering manila envelopes full of damning evidence to nearly every spouse of the company's employees. Some received copious photographs, others a detailed video compilation, a report that could empower them in their own divorce battles. Martin Harris's wife in particular got an especially voluminous envelope, filled with undeniable proof that shattered any remaining illusions about their marriage. For many others, a single letter was enough, a stark wake-up call that exposed the rampant infidelity at Thompson & Thompson. Each envelope ended with a terse message. In the spirit of transparency, you can thank Vanessa Vaughan for bringing this to our attention. In the aftermath, Thompson & Thompson's collapse was swift and brutal. My lawsuit set off a chain reaction, more than 20 legal actions, for divorce filings rippling through the company like a raging storm, consuming even those relationships that hadn't been directly tainted by infidelity. Just a murmur of scandal was enough to ignite doubt and ruin reputations. The desperate attempts by management to fire implicated staff only served to expose their own guilt, and those who were innocent quickly fled to save face. Within 2 weeks, the media descended, and an explosive exposé detailing the firm's downfall went viral. The phrase "work spouses" dominated headlines, an enduring reminder of the toxic cocktail of ambition and betrayal. I often thought about its origins, perhaps coined by an unsuspecting husband who'd never seen the inner workings of such corruption. Business evaporated, and within 2 months, Thompson & Thompson's doors closed for good. The office, once brimming with life, now stood empty for nearly a year before being repurposed. Then one day I found myself sitting once again across from Vanessa in my lawyer's office. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to apologize. A barrage of messages, denials, pleas, and even offers of bribery had come before this moment. But now she finally admitted her betrayal, blaming the high-pressure energy of high finance as if that were the excuse she needed. I couldn't see the connection between the financial world and her unfaithfulness. And then, in a final act of desperation, she shifted blame onto me, insisting that my lack of communication had driven her to cheat. Ridiculous. A spouse should never need to be reminded about fidelity, and certainly not be told that cultivating a work husband is acceptable. Even after everything, the enigma of Vanessa's betrayal haunted me. There were no real answers, only weak justifications and evasive excuses. The woman I once loved, with her open eyes and boundless ambition, was completely replaced by someone I no longer recognized. A woman who embraced deception with the defiant motto, "What he doesn't know won't hurt me." Caleb later recounted that their meetings were confined strictly to Wednesday lunch breaks. No clandestine trysts over my weekends away. I couldn't help but recall that eerie Christmas party remark. "A minor account emergency," I ventured. "Sounds like one of those account emergencies." Vanessa laughed lightly. "I wouldn't call it an emergency. It's an opportunity we can't miss." My heart sank with disappointment. We've both been working our tails off this year. I was hoping we could slow down a bit and spend some time together. "Sweetheart, please don't be upset," she coaxed. "Opportunities like this are rare." It was as if she confined her infidelity to a single day, a strange, perverse form of ethical cheating. Caleb even attempted to rationalize it as a twisted bonding ritual. But no matter how much I tried to find a reason for their actions, I could never escape the raw betrayal that tore at the core of my being. In the end, I was left with a crucial choice: spend a lifetime untangling the mess they created, or simply walk away. I chose to walk away, and though my legal battles ended successfully, the cost was staggering. Thompson and Thompson's funds were drained, and Martin Harris was left financially and morally ruined. The bitter irony was palpable. I had orchestrated the downfall of both the company and Harris, leaving them unable to pay the settlements I fought so hard for. Vanessa, now jobless, sought alimony, but my lawyer made it clear her financial ruin was self-inflicted, and her request was rightfully denied. Meanwhile, even the betrayed spouses, those whose partners had also strayed, turned their anger on me, seeing me as the catalyst who forced them to confront an ugly truth. I hadn't expected it, but in a city this vast, I never needed their forgiveness. As I drove home Sunday night, alone with my thoughts, I resolved to claim what was rightfully mine. I prepared for the deception that still lurked in every corner of my shattered life. To minimize costs, we had limited our surveillance to only a few key encounters in hotel rooms, primarily tracking Vanessa and Mr. Harris. This careful planning kept expenses low while ensuring I had undeniable, irrefutable evidence. And within 2 grueling weeks, that evidence was mine. While some might argue that one act of infidelity should have been enough punishment, my desire for revenge extended far beyond Vanessa and Mr. Harris. I wanted the entire network, every colleague who had enabled or ignored the betrayal, to face the consequences. In those final weeks before filing, I delved deep into work, staying late most nights to avoid being in that house of memories. I fabricated last-minute emergencies to justify trips to Wallops on Thursdays, spent Friday nights at Brandon and Tiffany's, and checked into a hotel on Monday. Anything to escape the suffocating reminder of what had happened at home. Vanessa grew increasingly insistent, complaining about how neglected she felt. Yet our every interaction was laden with cold silence and unspoken accusations. I even retreated to the guest room each morning, deliberately distancing myself. Perhaps she sensed the growing void, or perhaps she simply stopped caring. But nothing changed her weekly routine of long lunch breaks with her work husband. If anything, they grew longer and bolder over time. I eventually came to a stark realization. Infidelity at Vanessa's workplace wasn't an isolated incident. It was systemic. Many senior employees were deeply involved in extramarital affairs. As I revisited the videos day after day, one detail hurt more than any other. I was invisible in all of it. No one ever mentioned my name or spoke a word about me. Vanessa's constant display of her wedding rings during each clandestine encounter was the most painful indicator of her callous disregard. My presence was nothing more than an afterthought, a ghost in the background of her double life. Even the slight tenderness shared between her and Martin never carried the weight of true love. The final crushing blow came when I saw them saunter through the hotel lobby, her arm looped around his, as if on a permanent stroll toward betrayal. That was when I knew without doubt our marriage was beyond repair. I had reached my limit. I would no longer be the silent martyr. With the divorce papers already in motion and Caleb making final arrangements, I chose to expose everyone involved. My lawyer drafted the legal documents while Caleb set up one last operation to capture undeniable footage. At precisely 10 a.m. on that fateful Monday, the process server delivered the papers to Vanessa, Martin Harris, and even served the CEO of her firm. In the next hour, my phone continued to buzz with messages, but I focused solely on the evidence before me. In that defining moment, as I watched the grim 40-minute video of my wife locked in Martin's embrace, the smiles, the laughter, the intimacy that once promised love, I felt my heart shatter completely. It was as if each second burned a hole deeper into my soul. I recalled a dark joke about a husband catching his wife in bed with another, pointing a gun and declaring, "Don't laugh, you're next." But there was no laughter here. No room for fantasy. You have to seize them before they vanish. I promise I'll make it up to you. Her words made sense on the surface, yet something gnawed at me. That wife remark, I teased. I thought I was your one and only. How many wives do you have? I joked, trying to lighten the tension. A flicker of surprise washed over her face. Then a quick smile masked it. Just you, silly. Their betrayal demanded consequences, and I vowed that they would all face them. Before I confronted Vanessa directly, I needed distance. Time to let the rage settle and plan my next move. I took the rest of the week off, claiming a trip to Wallops, and drove away, carrying with me every painful memory and the evidence that sealed my fate. During that excruciating time, I met with childhood friend Brandon, who understood me better than anyone. His home became my refuge, a place where I could finally begin to process the immense loss. As I drove, my mind raced with questions. Had she become so skilled at living two lives that she could justify being with two husbands? One here, one across the street? One thing was painfully clear. Vanessa mistook my unwavering trust for naivety, and I, no matter how cautious, had been deceived. Betraying a husband who had loved her without question wasn't an achievement. It was a deep, personal violation. Our marriage had become a monument to broken trust, waiting for its final funeral. In the hours that followed, Brandon and his wife Tiffany, ever pragmatic, sat me down and talked me through it all. They urged me to cool my rage and find clarity, pointing out that my fury was aimed solely at Vanessa and her partner, while ignoring the broader toxic culture that allowed such betrayals to flourish. Men can be despicable, Tiffany had said with a wry smile. It's up to us to civilize them. Brandon, always nodding in agreement, reminded me that while my pain was very real, I needed to think strategically about how to bring down the entire corrupt network without destroying everything, my future included. My next steps were methodical. I called Caleb once more and laid out my intentions. Dismantle Vanessa's inner circle at the office by splitting it into two groups, management and a targeted group of about 10 close affiliates. My objective wasn't just to punish them. I aimed to obliterate the entire toxic structure that enabled my wife's betrayal. Caleb would discreetly install cameras in both segments, ensuring that every entry and exit through the lobby was recorded. When the time came to file for divorce, every adulterer in that office would have to face not just my wrath, but the legal consequences of their actions. That weekend, as I lay awake, wondering if I'd missed any clues earlier, I racked my brain over every interaction, every subtle change in Vanessa's behavior. But she always seemed supportive when I spoke about my work, never hinting at the hidden double life she led. Could she really compartmentalize her emotions so easily? I recalled her twitchy reaction to that one wife comment, a moment that now seemed to suggest she knew deep down what she was doing was wrong. I struggled to wrap my head around how anyone could maintain such blatant deception without breaking under guilt's weight. And then, a chilling thought emerged. By leaving town temporarily, I might have inadvertently allowed Vanessa and her work husband to use our home as a secret rendezvous. My anger flared again, but I quickly realized that wallowing in it wouldn't change anything. In the end, I had made my decision. No matter what additional betrayals came to light, I was determined to divorce her. With the plan set in motion, I steeled myself for the storm ahead and began my drive home on a cold Sunday night. To keep costs low, we limited our surveillance to Vanessa and Mr. Harris, recording their encounters only once while minimizing the number of room rentals needed. But in my heart, I needed proof, a damning, incontrovertible record that would leave no room for denial. And in just 2 long, torturous weeks, that proof was mine. Some people might say that one infidelity is punishment enough, and maybe it should be. But my drive for justice went far beyond just Vanessa and Mr. Harris. I wanted to expose every single person in that office who had enabled the betrayal. There was a complex network of deceit at work, and unraveling it took time. Many work spouses maintained a predictable weekly routine at the hotel across the street. Although we didn't catch every secret meeting, we got enough footage to serve my purpose. I began to immerse myself in work even more desperately, staying late most nights to avoid the crushing emptiness of our home. I fabricated last-minute emergencies, claiming trips to Wallops on Thursdays, even though most nights I found myself holed up in a hotel near my workplace. It's an office joke. We all say it, about how we see more of our work partners than our actual partners at home. Her laughter filled the room, but I couldn't help noticing her trembling hands. I promise, I'll just go in for a few hours tomorrow to kick things off, and then we can have the rest of the night together, she added, her smile strained. That Friday soon passed in quiet resignation, and true to her word, Vanessa left for work on Saturday morning. Fridays, I took refuge at Brandon and Tiffany's place. Mondays, I returned to that hotel, unable to stand the silence of empty rooms at home. At the same time, Vanessa complained about feeling neglected, and the air between us grew colder by the day. I retreated further into myself, even moving to the guest room and leaving early every morning. Perhaps she sensed the widening gap, or perhaps she simply stopped caring. Regardless, nothing deterred her from her regular Wednesday lunches with her work husband. If anything, those lunches grew longer and more frequent. In time, it became indisputably obvious that infidelity was endemic in Vanessa's workplace. A significant number of senior staff were entangled in extramarital affairs, their indiscretions woven into the fabric of the company's culture. Over and over, as I rewatched the videos, I noticed one thing that cut me deeper than any other. I was never acknowledged. Not once did anyone mention me, nor did they seem to care about the man they had betrayed. And still, there she was, wearing her wedding rings for all the world to see during each illicit tryst. A constant, painful reminder of a promise broken. I became a ghost in my own life, lingering in the background of her infidelities. Even when moments of tenderness appeared between her and Martin, they felt hollow, devoid of true passion. The final devastating blow came when I saw them, arm in arm, gliding through the hotel lobby as if nothing were wrong. That image confirmed what my heart had already known. Our marriage was irreparably broken, and so I finally reached the end of the road. I decided I would no longer tolerate this betrayal. As my lawyer finalized the divorce papers and Caleb wrapped up our surveillance, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation. At precisely 10 a.m. on that life-altering Monday, the process server delivered the divorce papers to Vanessa, to Martin Harris, and even to the CEO of Thompson & Thompson. In that moment, as my phone rang off the hook with messages I no longer cared to answer, I watched the cold, unyielding evidence of my wife's betrayal, a 40-minute video that pierced my soul. Every second, every smile and laugh shared between Vanessa and Martin confirmed what I already knew. Our marriage was over. In that final, heavy silence after the video ended, I turned to Tiffany and asked in a broken voice, "How long must I carry this burden?" Tiffany simply shook her head, pulled me into a silent embrace, and then went about preparing dinner without a word. Brandon, who had built his career in law, offered pragmatic support, and his wife, a high school science teacher with a keen analytical mind, joined us in countless discussions over that weekend. With their help, I began to plan my next steps. I called Caleb and detailed my vision. Break down Vanessa's office into 2 groups, target roughly 10 key individuals along with their work spouses, and expose them all. My goal wasn't merely to scorch them. I intended to dismantle their entire network. Every other employee would feel the ripple effects, but I'd do it without draining my savings. Caleb would install cameras discreetly in the management offices and the designated group spaces, while the rest of the staff would be recorded as they moved through the lobby. When it came time to file for divorce, every adulterous detail would be laid bare in court. I agonized over every detail that weekend, questioning if I had missed the warning signs. Vanessa had always been there, supportive, attentive, when I spoke about my work, never hinting at the enigmatic double life she led. Could she truly compartmentalize her professional and personal lives without a flicker of remorse? I recalled that strange, hurtful wife comment from that fateful Friday, a moment that now seemed filled with sinister implication. I struggled to fathom how anyone could live a lie for so long without crumbling under the weight of guilt. And then it struck me. By leaving town, I may have unknowingly given Vanessa and her work husband the perfect opportunity to use our home for secret trysts. My anger surged anew, but I forced myself to dismiss it. In the grand scheme of things, their actions, even as brazen as they were, became secondary. I had long since decided to divorce her, regardless of any future betrayals. That Sunday night, as I embarked on the long drive home, I resolved to claim what was rightfully mine. She dressed as if it were just another workday. Yet our so-called weekend together didn't really start until after 7 p.m. that night. Now, don't get me wrong, I have the utmost respect for hard work and meeting deadlines, but it wasn't the long hours that bothered me. It was the creeping secrecy invading our marriage. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Vanessa's work than she was sharing. That evening, while waiting for her return, a crushing realization hit me. We opted to minimize costs by only capturing footage of those key moments. Only Vanessa and Mr. Harris were chronicled repeatedly through discreet surveillance. I needed nothing less than incontrovertible evidence to shut down any chance of her dismissing her actions as a mere mistake. And in just 2 relentless weeks, that evidence was secured. Some might argue that one act of infidelity is punishment enough. Perhaps for some it is. But my hunger for retribution extended far beyond Vanessa and Mr. Harris. I wanted to expose every single person in that office who had turned a blind eye to betrayal. Their routine meetings, their weekly rendezvous at the hotel across the street, all of it was captured in our painstaking surveillance. I withdrew further into my work, frequently fabricating last-minute emergencies to escape the oppressive atmosphere of our once shared home. I would claim I needed to be at Wallops on Thursdays, spend Friday nights at Brandon and Tiffany's, and even check into a hotel on Monday mornings just to dodge the haunting memories of what once was. Meanwhile, Vanessa's demeanor grew increasingly detached and cold. Her repeated Wednesday lunches with her work husband became emblematic of the final rift between us. In the end, I realized that infidelity in her workplace was not a solitary incident. It was systemic. A troubling number of senior staff were enmeshed in extramarital affairs. And as I rewatched the damning videos day after day, one detail seared through me: my complete invisibility. Not a single mention of me was made. What pierced me most was seeing Vanessa wearing her wedding rings during every encounter, a silent yet ferocious display of her unconcern for our vows. I was, and always would be, invisible. Even when their exchanges carried a tinge of tenderness, it was an empty echo of what a true love should be. The final image, the sight of my wife and her work husband striding through that hotel lobby, his arm around her waist, confirmed that our marriage was irretrievably lost. With absolute finality, I made the choice to end it all. I refused to absorb any more of the pain or hear any more empty apologies. With my lawyer drafting the divorce papers and Caleb locking down every piece of evidence, I set forth on a path of retribution. A storm was coming, and I was ready to let it rip. Thank you for staying with me through this long, painful journey. If you feel moved by my story, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support gives me the strength to continue this fight and tells me I'm not alone. In the end, as my process server delivered the papers at precisely 10 a.m. on that fateful Monday, and as my phone buzzed with the inevitable aftermath, I felt an odd mix of finality and vindication. I had not only ended my marriage, betrayed by the woman I loved, but had also set in motion a campaign to expose the entire web of infidelity at Thompson & Thompson. Every envelope delivered, every piece of evidence gathered, reverberated like a battle cry against deception. Martin Harris's wife, among many others, received evidence so damning it would shatter her illusions, while the company itself was forced to confront the scandal that rapidly consumed it. Within weeks, legal action swept through the office like wildfire. Every name, every scandal was on display for the world to see. Media outlets pounced on the story, and the once proud firm soon crumbled under the weight of its own corruption. The very term work spouses became synonymous with betrayal, a dark reminder of how far this culture had fallen. Business halted, and within 2 months, Thompson & Thompson shut its doors for good. Nearly a year later, I sat across from Vanessa in my lawyer's office one final time. Tears streamed down her face as she attempted to convey remorse. Pleas, denials, and desperate attempts at reconciliation spilled out in a jumbled mess. She blamed the soulless nature of high finance, but I could never fathom how that could possibly justify her actions. In a final twist of bitter irony, she even tried to shift the blame onto me, arguing that I hadn't communicated my concerns adequately. Ridiculous. A spouse should never require a reminder of basic fidelity. Vanessa's infidelity remained an endless enigma, a series of flimsy excuses and evasions that offered no real explanation. Unlike me, who often peppered my conversations with quirky anecdotes from work, Vanessa never elaborated on the minutiae of her day. In fact, I couldn't recall a single time she opened up about what really went on in her office. It hit me then. She had built an impenetrable wall between her professional life and our home life, a divide I had never fully noticed until now. When she finally walked in that evening, she barely paused to greet me and made a beeline for the shower. The woman I once adored, so full of promise and honesty, was now a stranger, embraced by a mantra of deceit. And as Caleb later explained, their affair was confined to mere Wednesday lunch breaks, no secret trysts on the weekends I desperately craved. In her warped logic, this was just how it was, a contorted, self-imposed code of ethical cheating. But for me, it was all-consuming betrayal. I had two choices: to spend the rest of my life trying to unravel this mess, or to walk away once and for all. I chose to walk away. I emerged victorious in my legal battles, even as Thompson and Thompson's funds dried up, and Martin Harris was left in financial ruin. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had dismantled both the company and Harris, leaving them unable to pay the settlements I fought so hard for. Vanessa, now without a job, sought alimony, but my lawyer's argument that her unemployment was a direct result of her own infidelity won the day. Even the betrayed spouses, despite their own heartbreak, resented me for forcing them to confront a bitter truth. They labeled me the spark that ignited a wildfire of scandal. Such was life in this vast, unforgiving city. I needed no one's forgiveness. In my quest for justice, I wasn't simply after personal retribution. I wanted to expose the entire rotten culture of infidelity in that office. Every adulterous meeting, every secret rendezvous was carefully recorded. By keeping the number of room rentals low and focusing the surveillance on Vanessa and Mr. Harris, I made sure that when the time for divorce came, there would be irrefutable proof, a truth so indisputable that no one could possibly say it was just a one-time lapse in judgment. It took 2 excruciating weeks, but every minute of that time only solidified my conviction. I eventually came to see that even in my professional world, where I thrived on complex problems and cutting-edge technology, the simplest methods had exposed the worst human betrayals: a parked car, a discreet bribe, an inexpensive miniature camera. These basic tools brought down a life I'd once cherished so dearly. I kept asking myself, if I hadn't overheard that stray conversation, would I have ever known? In that moment, I learned that sometimes the most subtle signs are the most glaring. As I now pick up the fragments of my former life, I continue to rebuild, alone, scarred, yet determined to move forward. My marriage is over, and with it, the trust I once had was shattered beyond repair. Through it all, I've come to realize that in a world full of deceit, even the most sophisticated of technologies are helpless against the raw, unfiltered power of human betrayal. Thank you again for listening. If my story has resonated with you in any way, please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps us continue sharing these truths, and together we can learn from our past and forge a better future. I, meanwhile, turn my attention to the steak sizzling on the grill, my thoughts consumed with that unsettling remark about wife. Even if it had been offhand, it still felt wrong, lingering like a cold whisper at the back of my mind. 2 phrases from that fateful night, work husband and crossing the street, kept echoing in my head. Were they merely innocuous office jokes, or was there a more literal interpretation? Given the layout of Vanessa's office, directly across from it loomed 2 imposing edifices, a large medical center and the Marriott Hotel, wealth of possibility intertwined with dread. I recalled that at the Christmas party, several of Vanessa's colleagues had displayed an almost eerie familiarity with the hotel's layout. My rational mind tried to chalk it up to business lunches or client accommodations, but my imagination soon took a darker turn. Seeking some clarity amid the monotony of lab work, one week I decided to have lunch alone in my car. From my parking spot, I had a clear view of the street that separated Vanessa's office from the Marriott. At 10:45 a.m. on a Monday, just before lunch, I saw several couples strolling across, disappearing into the hotel's depths. About 30 minutes later, those same pairs, always just pairs, never in groups of 3 or more, strolled back to their offices. Vanessa was not among them, but the sight deepened my unease. Tuesday repeated the pattern. Different couples, yet the same suspicious behavior. I wrestled with the impulse to check out the hotel lobby more closely, but the fear of being seen, especially by Vanessa, held me back. By that afternoon, desperation led me down a path I never imagined I'd tread. I hired a private investigator. His name was Caleb Donovan, and I told him everything: the strange sightings, the growing suspicions. I even handed him a photo of Vanessa, my voice tremulous with the weight of my doubts. His reply was as unsettling as it was matter-of-fact. Don't dwell on it. Get back to your routine, and if there's something to be found, it will reveal itself soon enough. I forced a nod and murmured, I hope I'm wrong, even though deep down, I feared the inevitable outcome. By Thursday morning, my worst suspicions were confirmed. Seated in Caleb's modest office, he laid out the devastating truth I had both dreaded and expected. On Wednesday morning, at exactly 11:45 a.m., my wife entered the Marriott with Martin Harris draped around her waist like he owned the place. They paused briefly at the reception to grab a room key, only to vanish on the fourth floor. They didn't resurface until 12:40 p.m. Caleb, ever the meticulous observer, had a discreet conversation with a desk clerk and uncovered the heartbreaking truth. Vanessa and her so-called work husband were regulars at that hotel. Their secret rendezvous cost a down payment of a mere $300, he explained, though he warned me that gaining ironclad proof would demand an even greater price. Despite the torrent of self-loathing and internal turmoil rising within me for even entertaining these suspicions, I knew I had to pursue undeniable evidence, no matter how painful the truth would be. Caleb proposed a plan. With the cooperation of the desk clerk and precisely timed room rentals, he'd determine which room Vanessa and her colleague used during their next visit. He planned to secure the adjoining rooms, setting up discreet video surveillance. It was an expensive venture. Bribes, extra fees, the whole deal. But I was ready to pay whatever it took to expose the truth. The past 7 days had been torture. I began to distance myself from Vanessa, though she soon noticed my erratic behavior. When she questioned me, I brushed it off with half-hearted excuses about work. Deep down, though, I doubted she truly believed me. Even when she sought intimacy, I reluctantly played along, trying to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting, that perhaps I'd seen shadows where none existed. But each time we came together, my heart was heavy with anger and sorrow, as if my marriage was already dying before my eyes. Then the call came. Caleb had secured the room for the following Wednesday morning and evening. By Thursday, I found myself in his office, clutching evidence that would shatter my world beyond repair. A gut-wrenching 40-minute video played before me, each frame driving a metaphorical dagger deeper into my already wounded heart. There on screen was my wife, the very woman who had once been the center of my universe, locked in a passionate, intimate embrace with Martin Harris. In moments of utter chaos, a wry old joke about catching a spouse in bed, a gun in hand, would have sparked a laugh. But there was no humor in this crushing reality. I wasn't going to allow myself to drown in it. They would have to face the consequences of their treachery, and I would find the strength to walk away. Even then, I knew I needed space. Living under the same roof as Vanessa felt suffocating, so I arranged to take the rest of the week off, citing a trip down to Wallops if anyone asked. And after hastily packing a bag, I left behind a note and drove west, distancing myself from the wreckage of my marriage. Luckily, I had an old friend, Brandon, who lived about an hour beyond Baltimore. He welcomed me with open arms for the weekend, offering sanctuary my aching soul desperately needed. Driving away, my mind swirled with haunting questions about the woman I thought I knew so well. Had she become so adept at keeping her world separate that she could justify living with two husbands, one in our home and another across the street? One fact became painfully clear. Vanessa had confused trust with naivety. I, on the other hand, was anything but naive. Betraying a husband who had loved her unquestioningly was no small feat, but the days of blind trust were over. My marriage was in ruins, a funeral waiting to be held. I'm sharing this story with you on our channel because I believe in transparency, and I hope you'll join me by subscribing so you don't miss any future revelations. Feel free to hit that like button and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Sometimes sharing our pain can help us all heal. Returning to my life, I sought refuge with childhood friends, those who know you inside and out and aren't fooled by facades. Brandon immediately saw the turmoil etched on my face. When I finally recounted the gut-wrenching truth, his anger mirrored my own, though it was his wife, Tiffany, who soon urged us to temper our outrage with a cool head. "Look beyond the fury," she said softly. "Sometimes a woman's perspective reveals the deeper social dynamics at play." While my vengeance was squarely aimed at Vanessa and her work husband, Tiffany saw a broader picture, a web where rampant improper conduct in the workplace was not confined to my own heartbreak. As she put it, "Men are pigs sometimes, it's up to us to keep them in check." Brandon, ever the pragmatic lawyer, agreed. But I wasn't after wisdom, I was after justice. "I'm divorcing that deceitful, unfaithful woman," I declared. my voice cold and unyielding. She betrayed me, and it's clear this isn't her first offense. I want Martin Harris and every adulterer in that office to rue the day they broke their vows. Tiffany sighed, warning, "Be absolutely sure you're ready for the aftermath. Sometimes remorse can emerge when you least expect it. Think, do you really want to throw it all away?" Her words barely registered as I retrieved the damning evidence, and together we watched the footage. Martin Harris, a pencil pusher whose world revolved around numbers and luxury dining, was no match for the weight of my fury. For those excruciating 40 minutes, I watched my wife surrender herself to him. She smiled and laughed, and as she did, my world disintegrated. When the video ended, a heavy silence settled between us. I turned to Tiffany for guidance. "How long should I let this pain stew before I act?" I pleaded. She shook her head, offered a silent embrace, and without another word, set about preparing dinner. Brandon, who had built a career in law, was the backbone I leaned on. His wife, Tiffany, possessed a keen, analytical mind, and over that weekend, our conversations turned into discussions of strategy. I laid out my plan to Caleb. It would require time, money, and unwavering determination, but it was possible. We set our sights on dividing Vanessa's office into two camps, management and those closely tied to her. About 10 individuals, along with their work spouses, would face the full brunt of our next steps. I wasn't simply out for revenge. I wanted to dismantle the entire toxic network backing her warfare. The remaining employees might feel the ripple effects, but we'd keep costs down. Caleb would install hidden cameras in the offices of management and the selected co-conspirators, while the others would be monitored as they passed through the lobby. When it was finally time to file for divorce, I intended to bring every shred of evidence into the courtroom, ensuring that every adulterous spouse felt the full sting of their betrayal. That weekend, I wrestled with the nagging doubt. Had I missed the warning signs? Surely there had been hints along the way. Yet Vanessa always appeared warm, supportive, and deeply involved when I spoke about my work. How could she possibly be leading a double life without remorse? I recalled her jittery reaction when I confronted her about that fateful wife remark. It hinted that she might know exactly what she was doing. I couldn't fathom how someone could sustain such duplicity without crumbling under the weight of guilt. Then came a bone-chilling thought. By leaving town temporarily, had I unwittingly provided Vanessa and her work husband with the perfect opportunity to use our home as their clandestine retreat? Anger surged through me, yet I quickly realized that dwelling on it would only add to the pain. In the grand scheme, their actions, no matter how brazen, were irrelevant. I had already decided to divorce her. I would not allow any new betrayals to keep me tethered to a dying marriage. Resolute to reclaim what was mine, I steeled myself for the deception still to come and drove home Sunday night. We decided to minimize the footage, only capturing Vanessa and Mr. Harris on multiple occasions while limiting other room rentals, strategically keeping costs low. But when it came to my wife, I needed undeniable, irrefutable proof. I had to cut off any possibility for her to claim this was a one-time lapse in judgment. In a painstaking 2 weeks, a stretch marked by relentless anxiety, I achieved my objective. Some would say one instance of infidelity should be enough to spark retribution, and perhaps it would have been. But my thirst for revenge extended far beyond Vanessa and Mr. Harris. I wanted to expose everyone involved, the entire office complicit in enabling or covering up my wife's affair. Unraveling that tangled web of deceit took time. Most work spouses had a predictable routine, meeting weekly at the hotel across the street, sometimes even more frequently. Although we didn't catch every single instance, what we gathered was enough. Throughout this soul-crushing period, I buried myself in work, staying late most nights to avoid the painful emptiness of our home. I concocted last-minute emergencies to justify trips to Wallops on Thursdays, yet every evening I found myself forced to return to a house where each corner held raw memories of betrayal. Vanessa began to complain about feeling neglected, and our relationship grew increasingly cold, filled with silent, unspoken accusations. I even moved into the guest room, deliberately leaving each morning early to put distance between us. Perhaps she sensed the distance, or maybe she bought into my flimsy excuses. Regardless, nothing stopped her from continuing her routine Wednesday lunches with her work husband. In fact, those breaks only seemed to lengthen with every passing week. It soon became blatantly clear. Infidelity ran rampant in Vanessa's workplace. A significant number of employees, many in senior positions, were entangled in extramarital affairs. The rot seemed to originate from the very top. Months later, after watching the 3 separate videos over and over, I realized something startling. My name never came up. None of them mentioned me negatively, didn't defend their betrayal, as though I was invisible. What cut even deeper was seeing Vanessa proudly wearing her wedding rings during these encounters, a silent testament to her indifference. I was invisible. Although there might have been a faint pretense of tenderness between them, it was hollow, lacking the real substance of true love. The moment I caught sight of my wife and her work husband casually walking through the hotel lobby, his arm claimingly around her waist as they headed for their secret rendezvous, I knew it was over. There would be no more explanations, no more empty apologies. My decision had solidified. The marriage was finished, and I was set on exposing the entire toxic culture at her workplace. I won't sugarcoat it. I had no desire to hear her excuses or see her tears. The idea that it was just sex felt utterly revolting. Several separate encounters had obliterated any lingering illusion of faithfulness. While my lawyer meticulously drafted divorce papers, Caleb managed the rest. At exactly 10 a.m. on Monday morning, a process server walked into Thompson and Thompson's offices with calculated precision. He delivered the divorce documents to both Vanessa and Martin Harris at their desks, then made his way to the CEO's office, serving the company itself. In retrospect, there's an irony to it all. The CEO, Daniel Mercer, was complicit in the very culture I was determined to dismantle. At 67, with a trophy wife barely half his age, he still sought solace in his 45-year-old secretary. What drove him to seek that kind of comfort remains a mystery. By 10:20 a.m., my phone buzzed nonstop. I silenced it without missing a beat. Meanwhile, 5 of Caleb's operatives spread out across the city, delivering manila envelopes to nearly every employee's spouse at the company. Some packages carried photographs, others, videos. Each envelope included a detailed report, evidence they could use for their own divorce battles. Martin Harris's wife received an especially heavy envelope loaded with enough evidence to obliterate any illusions about her marriage. For others, a simple letter served as a stark wake-up call, revealing the rampant infidelity at Thompson and Thompson and daring them to confront their spouses. Each envelope was sealed with a single pointed note. In the spirit of transparency, you can thank Vanessa Vaughan for bringing this to our attention. I couldn't help but wonder, how many allies would my deceitful wife leave behind come Tuesday morning? The collapse of Thompson and Thompson was swift and brutal. Following my lawsuit, a tidal wave of legal actions, 20 in total, ensued. Divorce filings swept the office like wildfire, ensnaring even those marriages untouched by hard evidence. A mere whisper of scandal was enough to sow doubt and trigger further destruction. Management's frantic attempts to terminate implicated employees only unmasked their own corrupt involvement. Innocent names were quickly scrubbed from the picture as they fled, scrambling to salvage their reputations. The media pounced on the scandal with relentless fervor, and within 2 weeks, an explosive expose detailing the firm's demise went viral. The term work spouses dominated headlines, and I couldn't help but wonder who first coined it. The oblivious husband who never saw the toxic reality unfolding. Business collapsed in the aftermath, and within 2 months, Thompson and Thompson permanently closed its doors. The once bustling office lay eerily empty for nearly a year before being repurposed. Then one fateful day, I found myself sitting across from Vanessa in my lawyer's office. Tears streamed down her face as she finally attempted to express remorse. For weeks, I had been bombarded with messages, pleas, denials, apologies, and even desperate bribes. Now she was finally admitting to her betrayal. She blamed the high-pressure atmosphere of the financial world, as if that explained everything. I couldn't see any link between her infidelity and the finance sector, yet to her it was an inherent part of the culture. But her apology was brief and unsatisfying. In an astonishing twist, she tried to shift the blame onto me, claiming my failure to communicate had driven her to cheat. Ridiculous. A spouse should never need reminders to remain faithful. You shouldn't have to be told that a so-called work husband is unacceptable. Even in the aftermath, Vanessa's infidelity remained a baffling enigma. She never offered a true explanation, only flimsy justifications and evasive excuses. The woman I once adored, the bright-eyed, ambitious woman who had seemed so honest, had vanished. In her place, there was a stranger who embraced deceit with the mantra, "What he doesn't know won't hurt me." Caleb later informed me that their rendezvous were limited to their Wednesday lunch breaks, never encroaching upon my weekends away, as if she were following a twisted, self-imposed code of ethical cheating. Caleb even tried to rationalize it as some perverse bonding ritual, but I couldn't reconcile his explanation with the toxic culture at Thompson & Thompson, a place where building team spirit was just a thinly veiled excuse for workplace affairs. It was as if these employees believed themselves to be part of an exclusive club, bound by a secret social contract. No matter how hard I tried to find logic in their behavior, I couldn't shake the raw emotion tied to the collapse of my marriage. In the end, I faced a stark choice: spend a lifetime unraveling this tangled deception or simply walk away. I chose the latter. My legal battles ended in victory, though Thompson & Thompson's coffers were left empty, and Martin Harris was financially decimated in his own divorce proceeding. The irony was not lost on me. I had dismantled both the company and Harris, leaving them unable to settle the claims I pursued. Vanessa, now jobless, sought alimony, but my lawyer argued convincingly that her unemployment was a direct result of her own infidelity. Her claim was denied. In a bitter twist, many of the betrayed spouses, despite their partner's own misdeeds, resented me for exposing the truth. Instead of directing their anger at the real culprits, they cast me as the instigator, the trigger who forced them to confront a harsh reality. It was an unforeseen consequence, one I had to accept. In a city as vast as this, I didn't need anyone's forgiveness. Then one evening, Emma Harris approached me in a dimly lit bar. Her presence was arresting, a captivating allure in the way she carried herself as she slid into the seat beside me. "I'm divorcing my husband," she declared boldly, "but I want more than revenge. I want him to feel the sting of betrayal, to know that I slept with his mistress's husband. Will you help me, Mr. Vaughan?" The question hung in the air before hitting me with a final blow. "Will you defile me and help humiliate the man who betrayed your wife?" I paused, weighed the question in the silence, then consented, a decision I never once regretted. Vanessa's family was incensed when they confronted me about the divorce, but I met them head-on. I even showed them the video evidence as they watched in shock, their anger dissolving into grief and shame. Apologies followed, and though they eventually stopped blaming me, they had once pleaded for me to give Vanessa another chance. Forgiveness, however, was beyond my reach. I couldn't recall Vanessa ever asking for forgiveness, and my heart had hardened. For over a year after the divorce, I found myself revisiting every painful moment, marveling at the bitter irony. Despite my background in cutting-edge electronics, it wasn't advanced technology that exposed Vanessa's betrayal. It was simple, almost primitive methods: a parked car, a well-placed bribe to a desk clerk, an off-the-shelf miniature camera. They served as a brutal reminder that even the most sophisticated technology can't shield you from human treachery. I couldn't help but wonder, if I hadn't overheard that stray conversation, would I have ever discovered the truth? From that moment on, the warning signs were impossible to miss: the lingering glances, the accidental crossings on the street, and the casual indifference of couples strolling side by side as if nothing were amiss. How had they managed to fly under the radar for so long? Did nobody care? It forced me to question the very nature of our modern world. Had infidelity become more common than we ever realized? I even recalled how in my own work circles, men would boast about their conquests, finding their only true solace in their own company. Once again, I was left on the outside, a reluctant spectator to the reckless indulgences of those I once considered peers. Occasionally, I catch a glimpse of Vanessa on the street, a fleeting moment in a store or passing on the sidewalk. We never exchange words. When our eyes meet, there's a flicker of sorrow that I can't bear to return. Her presence is a painful reminder of a life that has now collapsed into ruins. And yet, I have turned a corner. Like a detonator triggering an unstoppable chain reaction, I set in motion events that not only destroyed my marriage, but also shattered my very sense of self. Now I stand among the pieces, forced to rebuild from the debris. Before I close today's chapter, I want to thank you for staying with me through this raw and personal recounting. If my story resonated with you in any way, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing your thoughts down in the comments. Your feedback is the fuel that keeps our community strong. As for the aftermath, while my lawyer prepared the divorce documents meticulously, Caleb took over the rest. At precisely 10 a.m. on Monday morning, a process server strode into the offices of Thompson & Thompson with deliberate precision. He served legal papers to both Vanessa and Martin Harris right at their desks, then calmly proceeded to the CEO's office to serve the company itself. Looking back, the irony stings. The CEO, Daniel Mercer, had been immersed in the very culture of infidelity I was determined to dismantle. At 67, with a trophy wife barely half his age, he still found comfort in the arms of his 45-year-old secretary. What drove him to that particular solace remains a stark mystery. By 10:20 a.m., my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I silenced it and let the day begin. Meanwhile, 5 of Caleb's trusted operatives spread out through the city, delivering manila envelopes to nearly every employee's spouse at the firm. Some envelopes held photographs, others carried videos, each accompanied by a detailed report of evidence that could be used in their own divorce proceedings. Martin Harris's wife, in particular, received an especially thick envelope brimming with proof that shattered any illusions about her marriage. For some, a single letter was enough, a pointed message alerting them to the rampant deceit at Thompson & Thompson and urging action. Every envelope ended with a simple note: "In the spirit of transparency, you can thank Vanessa Vaughan for bringing this to light." I couldn't help but wonder how many allies my unfaithful wife had left by Tuesday morning. In the wake of my legal storm, Thompson & Thompson crumbled without mercy. The lawsuit I filed against the company set off a cascade of more than 20 legal actions. Divorce filings erupted like wildfires, sweeping through even those marriages that hadn't suffered direct betrayal. Just the whisper of scandal was enough to ignite doubt and destroy reputations. Management's desperate attempts to fire those implicated only revealed their own deep-seated corruption. Many who once appeared innocent fled in a bid to salvage what little reputation they had left. The scandal quickly caught fire in the media. Within 2 weeks, an explosive expose detailing the firm's complete collapse went viral, and the term work spouses dominated headlines. I couldn't help but wonder if the phrase had been coined by an oblivious husband, blind to the toxic environment around him. Business ground to a halt, and within 2 months, Thompson & Thompson shut its doors for good. The once busy office sat empty for nearly a year before being repurposed. Then one day I found myself facing Vanessa across my lawyer's desk. Tears streamed down her face as she tried, finally, to plead remorse. For weeks I had endured a barrage of messages, pleas, denials, apologies, and even desperate attempts at bribery and negotiation. Now she was forced to confront the consequences of her betrayal. She blamed the high-pressure world of finance for her actions, as if the cutthroat culture somehow excused what she had done. I couldn't connect her infidelity to the financial sector, but to her it was inseparable. Yet her apology was fleeting. In a final twist, she attempted to shift the blame onto me, claiming that my inability to communicate had driven her to cheat. Absurd. A spouse should never require reminders to remain loyal. No one should have to be told that turning a blind eye to a work husband is acceptable. Even after everything, the enigma of Vanessa's infidelity remained. She never provided a genuine explanation, only half-hearted justifications and evasive excuses. The woman I loved, the ambitious and sincere soul I once knew, was completely gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable and steeped in deceit. She clung to the notion that, "What he doesn't know won't hurt me." According to Caleb, her flirtations were limited strictly to Wednesday lunch breaks, no secret trysts on my weekends away. As if, in her warped logic, she was practicing a sort of ethical cheating, keeping it contained but still relentlessly hurtful. Caleb even tried to rationalize the affair as a bizarre bonding ritual. Meanwhile, Thompson & Thompson's toxic corporate culture created a warped sense of loyalty, where team building was little more than an excuse for clandestine encounters. In that environment, employees confined their extramarital liaisons to a single partner, their closest colleague, as if bound by some unspoken fraternity of shared risk. No matter how I tried to rationalize their actions, I couldn't escape the truth. My attachment to the collapse of my marriage was deeply personal and raw. Ultimately, I was left with a stark choice: spend a lifetime untangling the mess or simply walk away. I chose to walk away. I emerged victorious in the legal battles, even as Thompson and Thompson's funds ran dry, and Martin Harris was left financially devastated by his own divorce. The irony was bitter. I had managed to pull the rug out from both the company and Harris, leaving them unable to meet the settlement claims I pursued. Vanessa, now out of work, sought alimony, but my lawyer made it clear that her unemployment was a consequence of her own betrayal. Her request was promptly denied. Even worse, many of the betrayed spouses, despite their own marital wounds, resented me for forcing them to face the ugly truth. Instead of directing their anger at the right people, they pinned it on me, the spark that ignited their confrontation with reality. I had not anticipated this reaction, but in a city this vast, I never needed their forgiveness. Then something completely unexpected happened. One evening at a quiet bar, Emma Harris approached me. Her presence was magnetic, commanding attention as she settled beside me. "I'm divorcing my husband," she declared, her voice steady and intense. "But I want more than just revenge. I want him to understand the magnitude of betrayal. I need you to know that I slept with your wife's husband. Will you help me, Mr. Vaughan?" Her question lingered in the air, heavy with implication. "Will you help me defile and humiliate the man who betrayed your wife?" After a long, silent moment, I agreed. And that decision has never left my conscience. Vanessa's family was furious when they learned of the divorce, confronting me with a storm of anger. But I faced them directly, showing them the damning video as they watched in stunned silence. Their anger eventually gave way to shock, sorrow, and lasting shame. Apologies flowed, and though they once pleaded for me to give Vanessa another chance, forgiveness was far beyond my reach. My heart had turned to stone. For over a year after the divorce, I replayed every moment in my mind, the bitter irony of it all echoing in every thought. Despite my expertise in advanced electronics, it wasn't high-tech surveillance that unveiled Vanessa's betrayal. It was the simplest of tools: a parked car, a discreet bribe to a desk clerk, and a cheap, off-the-shelf miniature camera. These crude methods served as a brutal reminder that no technology can ever truly protect against human betrayal. I often wondered if I would have ever known the truth if I hadn't overheard that fateful conversation. From that day forward, the signs were impossible to ignore. The lingering, accusatory glances, the accidental brush of hands on the street, and the offhand nonchalance of couples strolling past, seemingly indifferent to everything. How had these betrayals gone unnoticed for so long? Did nobody care? It forced me to confront a sobering reality. These temptations and betrayals aren't rare anomalies. They're part of the fabric of our modern lives. In my own circles, I'd heard men boast about their countless conquests while their only comfort lay in self-indulgence. And once again, I found myself forever cast aside, forced to witness the reckless abandon display by those I once called peers. Every once in a while, I catch a glimpse of Vanessa, a fleeting glance in a store, a satellite of regret on the street. We never speak, but our eyes meet, and in that brief moment, there's a flash of shared sorrow. I quickly turn away, unable to hold her gaze any longer. Her presence is an ever-present reminder of the shattered life I once knew. My world is in ruins, yet I've begun the slow process of piecing myself back together. As I wrap up this chapter of my life on our channel, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe if you'd like to follow along as I rebuild and seek justice. Your support means more than you know. It keeps this community strong and real. Soon after, while I stewed in solitude and anger, I began noticing how Vanessa's work life seeped into our home. Despite our shared space, I found excuses to escape, fabricated emergencies that sent me on trips to Wallops or late nights at a nearby hotel. Fridays, I sought refuge with Brandon and his wife, Tiffany. Mondays, I checked into yet another hotel, too afraid to face the emptiness of our house. Vanessa started complaining about feeling neglected as our relationship grew colder. Each silent dinner and empty conversation a reminder of the betrayal. I even retreated to the guest room each morning, deliberately distancing myself. Perhaps she sensed the strain, or maybe she clung to my feeble excuses. But nothing could stop her from continuing her weekly lunches with her work husband. In fact, each Wednesday, Those lunches seemed to last longer and carry deeper secrets. It became undeniable. Infidelity was not an isolated incident in Vanessa's world. A vast number of her colleagues, many occupying senior positions, were entangled in extramarital affairs. The rot started at the very top. Later, as I reviewed the videos over and over, I noticed something that stung even more. I was never mentioned. Not once did anyone speak ill of me, or even acknowledge my existence. Vanessa's constant wearing of her wedding rings during those illicit meetings was a silent, maddening testament to her indifference. I was nothing more than a ghost in my own home, even when I saw a hint of tenderness between her and her paramour. It was all so shallow, lacking the depth and passion of a real committed relationship. The final nail came when I saw them, arm in arm, casually striding through the hotel lobby as if it were an everyday occurrence. That was when I knew. The marriage was dead and beyond saving. There'd be no empty apologies, no worn-out cliches. My decision was absolute. I wasn't interested in hearing excuses or seeing tearful remorse. The idea that it might have been just a fling was utterly repulsive. Multiple encounters had obliterated any remaining illusion of fidelity. As my lawyer finalized the divorce paperwork, Caleb continued his covert work. At exactly 10 a.m. on a fateful Monday, a process server marched into Thompson & Thompson's offices and, with deliberate precision, served Vanessa and Martin Harris with divorce papers at their desks. Then he moved on to the CEO's office and served the company itself. In a twist of bitter irony, Daniel Mercer, the CEO, had been deeply involved in the same culture of infidelity that I was determined to expose. At 67, with his trophy wife barely half his age, he still sought solace with his 45-year-old secretary. What drove him to that, I may never know. By 10:20 a.m., my phone was aflutter with messages, but I muted it without a second thought. Meanwhile, Caleb's team, 5 operatives in all, spread out across the city, delivering manila envelopes to nearly every employee's spouse at the firm. Some recipients got stacks of photographs, others received video evidence, and every envelope bore a meticulous report detailing the betrayals ready to be used in divorce suits. One envelope, sent to Martin Harris's wife, was particularly heavy, stuffed with enough proof to shatter any remaining illusions. For many, a single stark letter was enough to serve as a wake-up call, a call that exposed the rampant infidelity at Thompson & Thompson and dared them to confront their own spouses. Each envelope concluded with a simple, pointed note. In the spirit of transparency, you can thank Vanessa Vaughan for bringing this to our attention. In the whirlwind that followed, Thompson & Thompson fell like a house of cards. My lawsuit against the company set off a chain reaction. Over 20 legal actions that swept through the office like a storm. Divorce filings spread like wildfire, consuming even those marriages that hadn't been directly exposed. Just a murmur of scandal was enough to spread doubt and vaporize reputations. Management's frantic attempts to fire implicated employees only revealed their own complicity, and those who were truly innocent quickly fled to save face. The media caught wind of the scandal and pounced immediately. Within 2 weeks, an explosive expose detailing the firm's downfall went viral, with work spouses headlining the narrative. I often wondered if that phrase originated from an oblivious husband, totally blind to the very real corruption unfolding around him. Businesses within the firm dwindled, and within 2 months, Thompson & Thompson shut its doors for good. The once vibrant office sat empty and desolate for nearly a year before it was repurposed. Then, as if fate demanded closure, I found myself once again across from Vanessa in my lawyer's office. Tears streamed down her face as she tried, at last, to muster an apology. For weeks I had been bombarded with messages, pleas, denials, apologies, even desperate attempts at bribery and negotiation. But now here we were. She attributed her actions to the high-pressure environment of finance, as if that explained everything. I could never see how that could excuse her betrayal. And then, in a baffling twist, she tried to pin the blame on me, claiming that my failure to communicate led her astray.